No call.
Warning, Neo detected. Warning, Neo detected.
Tom Van to the panel.
Hey, you
Welcome,
guys.
Tom Van.
How did you, Tom? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, we
Okay.
can. I wanted you to come up on panel because I had some questions about the Kbar knife that you were describing the other night. Can you give us a little bit more insight on what you said the other night when I had the copyright and the show got kind of canceled or whatever? Are you there?
Tom. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Okay. Do you have YouTube open?
Yep.
Okay. You need to close that tab, if you will.
Or just
if
mute
you're
the
in-
YouTube and listen
Yeah,
on
or just
StreamYard.
mute it.
Okay. What were you going to ask me about the Kbar 12 gauge?
Oh, you were stating the other night about how the K-bar would make certain wounds.
Yeah.
If you could repeat that, and as far as your expertise on all this stuff, I'd like to hear some more on that.
Well, that's based upon the knife. All knives are sharp edges. It's technique that you can do with it. It's a 7-inch blade fixed. So if you stab a person, you're going to have a stab mark, the length of from top to bottom. But if you push it in and you pull that knife down 12 inches, it's going to look like a machete did it. And then with all wounds, after that, the bigger the cut, the more the wound spreads open in a V shape, and the deeper you go. So somebody comes in there and they see that, then they see a stab wound, or then if he takes it and turns it, if the K-bar has a serrated edge and you push down, or if a person's fighting back, they're moving, so it's going to look like a tear.
Okay.
So it's hard to say, so they can be different wounds. My theory would be, and it's just a guess, if this was Brian, if this is Brian in his first time, and Kaylee woke up, he's going to panic, and he's going to start stabbing wildly. Remember that show you showed me of that man on Forge with Fire stabbing that person?
Yeah.
He stabbed 30 times in 10.2 seconds. I recorded it.
Wow.
So that can be done, and if you stay away from, like I was telling Jeff at that night too, if you're going to stab in the chest area, your blade's not going to go in as much because of the ribs. You got to turn it sideways, sharp edge towards the wall. Then you have a much better chance. And that would tire you out. That could dull the blade. And that's why we were taught, I don't know what they're taught now, but we were taught stab underneath the sternum, not center, a little bit over, because you got the aorta there. You don't want to get a lot of blood on you. You push down the knife so it's perpendicular and you push up. And when you do that, you are stabbing, you're going to cut their large intestine, diaphragm, liver, and lungs. So that's why I can see no screaming. And when I was in the Marines too, I saw about 11 people in knife fights and nobody screamed when they were stabbed. And some of them did survive. And I asked him about it. He said, well, it felt like I was being punched in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until after the adrenaline came down, he said, then it started to hurt a lot. So a person could, like I said, the number of wounds that are different. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. And that could also be, from speculation point, he might have done that to make it look like there was more people. It's
Good
like,
point.
Yeah,
Okay.
like we said, we always kept our Kbar knives unsnapped. It will stay in the sheath. So he could pull it out, and this is how I met Jeff. He was asking about it. The bottom end of a Kbar knife is like a hammer, and we were taught the Marines are always used by different agencies and stuff. So if you're doing something, like that, and if somebody's sleeping, you go in, you want to knock them out first. And if I was him, like say let's say that's once again assuming Brian did it. And if I was him,
Right. Right.
what I would do is I would bring a pistol with me for backup in case things go sideways. Now, number one, I would never use a knife. That's just ridiculous. Just buy a 22 with a silencer. Because contrary to popular belief, silencers aren't pure silencers, but the lower the caliber, the less gunpowder, the less noise it will make.
Right.
So that's what I would do, but it could be done in 7, 8 minutes easy.
So, do you believe that one person could subdue two people at once?
Well, this is the thing I don't know, 12 gauge, is that when he goes in there, and I know there's different theories, but let's assume Maddie and Kaylee are in the bed sleeping. So the biggest thing you don't want to do is noise. You don't want people to have a lot of noise. I would knock them out first if I could. If I had to use a knife and I was sick that way, I would knock him out. And then if he was stabbing Maddie first, Kaylee could have came to. And the first thing she's going to do is try to go backwards, get away from the knife.
Right.
And I think if he panicked, he could do all those nasty different type wounds because she's moving, he's moving. And then if her face was broken up, like some people have been insinuating, you can do
Right.
that. You can do that with the bottom of a Kbar knife easily. So
That makes sense.
I mean,
This is basically a hammer to the face, right? I mean,
yeah, you could do it like 5 or 6 blows. It doesn't take long. And as you saw from, like I said again, that show, you can stab a person really fast. And if you stayed in more soft tissue,
How quickly does a knife like that dull usually?
well, it depends
Your
what
your experience.
if you're hitting bone, it could dull really fast because you're gonna be really don't have to hit that hard if you're in soft tissue. So we were taught that stay away from the bones, soft tissue. If you're gonna do anything with their throat, turn them over so that the blood goes into the bed or something like that, if you can, because you don't want to get that stuff on you. And I don't know how much he had on him, but look at I think I said this another time. Look at the O.J. Simpson case. He stabbed Ron Goldman 17 times, and his Bronco only had a few blood smears inside.
Right. Right.
So it's people think, well, there had to be screaming, there had to be blood all over the place. I would say most of that blood came out afterwards as the person's bleeding out. But 11 times does not make me an expert by any means. But
Right. Right.
that's what I saw. And he might have just came down. He heard Xana. He had to go do something. She might have said somebody's here. He gets up. He could hit him with one slash to the neck, which the coroner said he had. Push him back, onto the bed, which would account for some of the blood we saw with the mattress. And then the blood trickling out, his head would be towards that wall. The blood would hit that. I mean, that's what I'm thinking of. And then
Right.
finish off Xana. They could have been. I think they would have been gone faster for that.
and he's got total element of surprise. He knows
Yeah,
exactly what's going to happen next. They have no clue what's going on.
yeah.
Do you believe that there was any fighting back? You possibility have any chance to
It
fight back against
it
any of those?
it depends what you mean by fighting back. When a coroner or medical examiner looks at it, they're looking at wounds on their hands and arms and stuff like that. If they go into a crime scene, you're looking at is furniture tipped over, indicating a more big fight going on. But even if they fought back, you could, once again, stabbing fast, Kaylee could have a lot of wounds on her, and the whole fighting back lasted 5, 6 seconds.
Right.
And he might have even continued. So it's by itself, it's too hard to tell for me. But I could see, like for example, if Xana grabbed the blade of that knife, which I would never recommend anybody ever do, if you take your fingers and just put, find out how much flesh is between there and the bone, it's not much at all. So it could have been one grab and that happened. But people will tend to think, oh, she must have been really trying to grab it all the time. I don't think so.
Right. Any possibility that, if he's with any, criminology experience, that he would just cut her fingers afterwards to make it look like defensive wounds?
I don't see any upside to that, Jeff.
Yeah.
And like I said, anything's possible. But
But just no real advantage to doing that.
yeah, the thing about using a knife, the only reason people use it if they want to really inflict nasty wounds on somebody, or that's all they can afford. Something like I don't see why using a knife the chance of DNA and all that types of stuff gets too high, and you want to be out of there real quick.
I have a question for you, Tom.
Yeah.
Leslie and Billy says, ask him if he thinks Ian and Harsh would know all about knives and where to stab them.
I don't know too much about him. The little bit I saw, and this is just my take on him, he seems a little off. I don't know.
Mhm.
He could. Anybody see the sad thing about it with the internet? You can find all this stuff I've talked about on the internet,
Right.
and that's the hard part too. Is it doesn't take. It's not rocket science per se.
Right. Right.
And then if you don't want to have throw off spatter, just don't arc your hand over the head and stab somebody. You don't need that. You can just easily insert a knife that goes in like butter for, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but it goes in real easy.
Right. Exactly. And I've shown some videos and I've read some articles in some of my other library videos that I have on this case, and it described exactly the way you just said it. I'm glad that you gave it some life though, because when you're reading something, it's kind of difficult to get the perspective. I really appreciate you giving us that perspective.
But, like I
Good.
said, oh, sorry, I'm for interrupting.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
See, that's why as I look at that, we really have to see the autopsy report. And, if people think 51 is a lot of wounds, but it being done extremely fast. And the only thing I can think of, anger, he freaked out. Whoever did this freaked out. This is their first time. And that's the thing about these kind of crimes is everything, you can't make a perfect crime, especially with a knife. If you're going to use a knife, don't do it because things can go, you're too close. Things can happen to you.
Also, I don't know the psychology of things, but is there any possibility that, of the 51, if there's a notion of like it's of sexual nature, like this was possibly somebody he was ruminated upon or was couldn't have, and that there's a connection to, that he's destroying something that he couldn't have a female of this sort, or I'm just speculating, but I mean, it does seem like a lot of stab wounds, but if you're going at it with that kind of a whatever is going to get the rage up that high,
It doesn't necessarily have to be all rage though, Jeff. Like here's what I was thinking about and speculating about the other day was he wanted to know what it felt like to do things. And when he put his questionnaire out there, maybe he decided I'm just going to do this my way. He might have just wanted to go in and kill one person, but then things happen and you have to adjust and adapt. And I think
right,
if Brian, I think if he came out, he knew there's going to be some noise, and he might have saw Dylan, but he can't waste time because 911 could be there in 4 or 5 minutes.
Right.
And that's maybe why he took off so fast. He doesn't know what that person did if he saw her, for example.
right, right.
Nina, do you have any questions for Tom or any comments?
One of the comments that I put in chat is I had read like the different things that can happen to the knife, that it can dull, the tip can break off, it can get twisted, and that if all that happens, that's like different, that it can cause it to look like different wounds.
Sure, Nina, that could happen. But I'm thinking more of breaking off the tip. how hard are you stabbing? And you're most likely going to be hitting bone to break off the tip. And that's what people always think of the chest area and stuff like that. But there's too many rib bones in there. It's a 50-50 shot. And
Didn't
it,
the dad say that her liver was destroyed?
he
I mean, the
said,
wounds
yeah,
were to that point that the liver was destroyed in
yeah.
that
See,
region.
that would be more indicative to me. 12 gauges. He stabbed right underneath the rib cage, pushed the knife down, and pushed up. And then that would go through all those organs that I said earlier. And that one knife wound could kill a person. Your body's going to go into shock extremely fast. You're going to bleed out extremely fast.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
Could a novice person research this stuff enough to be proficient to do that, in your opinion?
well, they
You
would
being in
have
the military, how long did it take you to really get in your mindset that you could be that proficient?
well, what we did in basic training in the Marine Corps, you get knife fighting, but it's mostly how to defend yourself if somebody else has a weapon, knife. And we were taught to keep the knife close to our right side if we're right-handed and use our hand to pull them into it. Because you stick a knife blade out, somebody's just going to knock it out. So what we did, I was going into S2 intelligence, so we required more training with knives just in case, and we had a Navy SEAL train us. And he was very, very good, and we practiced that way in they're just like simulated dummies, just to see what it was like to feel, how you would handle a knife. Anybody could do it. I think you'd have to practice a little bit though at home.
Mhm.
But I don't know because I don't know how when you look at fights or knife fights and stuff like that on the internet, people are wailing. They're not really doing things strategically. These like that guy that stabbed him in that forged metal one.
Right.
Netflix. I don't know if you'd want to do it that way. I don't know what his end game, what he was actually trying to do or accomplish with them. Did he want to torture them? Uh, that's why I think that the autopsy is going to be important too.
Right. I got another question for you. It says, stabbing someone is that like gutting an elk or any animal?
I have never been hunting outside of pheasant hunting when I was younger, so I wouldn't know the whole
Oh,
process. You'd have to ask somebody that's more. I've never done that. I just never done it myself. I just
okay.
know that our whole thing was one or two cuts and you're done and get out of there. And that's why I said, I could see him bringing a handgun. He owned two handguns in case things got too weird. I think he was surprised. I don't think he planned on going in to kill four people. It just happened that way. Who knows? He didn't know Xana was going to be up getting a DoorDash or any of these other people. Um,
Yeah,
I,
there's a lot of variables that I was thinking myself as well, that the DoorDash driver, within minutes of him driving around, I mean, the DWI hit and run outside of his residence. I mean, it would just the cards were not stacked in his favor if he's the one that did this. Man, he
well,
went through some obstacles for sure.
what if you think about doing that though, 12 gauge, you gotta. I think his plan was one. It's gonna be quick, 5 minutes in and out. And then he was faced with this stuff, and at that point, do you go through with it? Like, for example, when he went into the bedroom upstairs, he saw Maddie and Kaylee. There's a moment where he has to make a decision. Am I going to do this or am I going to leave?
Do you
Yeah.
think my theory has always been that Kaylee was in her room with the dog, and that the dog alerted her to something going on across the hall, and then so I always wondered if he could see through Maddie's window from the back parking lot and just kind of watched and saw that, okay, she's alone in her room. If he saw the state that she was in, kind of like we see at the grub truck, that she's a little tipsy, maybe that was his intent, was just to go in there. He could slip into that one room, do whatever he was planning on doing, and then get out of there. But it was the dog that awoke Kaylee, and Kaylee walked across the hall. maybe Kaylee didn't even know Maddie was being stabbed and thought she was just being, assaulted.
The problem with that for me, Jeff, would be this. I respect your opinion, but my
Sure,
problem for
sure.
me is
No, it's fine.
that if he was doing that and Kaylee said to somebody here, I think that was actually Santa, but let's say Kaylee did that, she was coming in on him, it would be much more noisier for her to subdue her standing up. And I think that would have really, I would think Xana would hear that, if nothing else.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
a lot
I
has to
wonder though,
happen.
him throwing her, Kaylee onto the bed, maybe after hitting her or as he's hitting her in the face a bunch of times with the hammer end of the knife, I wonder if that would sound to like somebody downstairs, like somebody's playing with the dog on Maddie's bed, right above them.
Okay, with that too, though, um, let's go back to if Kaylee walks in on him, she's most likely going to scream or really shout loud. That'd be my
Right.
opinion.
Right.
But if she is waking up and he sees that, he can do one of two things. He can put a pillow over her face, so she can't see where the knife is coming from. But that would happen. I think that part would happen pretty fast.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like scream prevention is like the is
Oh,
key.
well, yeah. If they
Right.
scream and you're up there, what are you gonna do?
Right.
And then
Right.
you're gonna you don't want to let them get DNA under their fingernails and all that. I don't think they fought
Yeah.
that long. And I don't know. It's just hard to know. I know Steven, kind and Steven, what's the other father's name? Maddie's. They might, or Santa's father. They thought their girls put up a great fight. I don't know if that's true or not. If they just want to believe that,
Right.
Right.
because the thing was, I think Dylan would have heard that, or at least Bethany, and I don't personally think that they knew or were in on it. I don't go for that. I don't know. And my thing is, I don't really know if Brian did it or not. I need to. I'm on the fence. I have to see more. I tend to think though he may have because of all the evidence and touch DNA being on there. I just don't think that that's just a coincidence. They were tracking a white Elantra with no front plate. Now, when the trial comes, we'll see if there was a back plate on there.
What
I,
about Tom? You're if place yourself in this position of maybe being the killer, the
uh,
knife sheath being left there. Like, how do you go in with the knife sheath? How are you carrying it? What would seem what do you think would is how it went down?
well, if he was wearing like Dickies coveralls, he could buy a belt that's a little bit bigger than his normal size and use that and put the sheath on that. That would be the best way to do it. Now, you do look like you're walking in with a knife sheath holster, but
Hmm.
you could do it that way. I
But then
think
you've got
he,
to unbuckle the belt and then slide it through the opening of
yeah,
the sheath, right, to get
sure,
it off.
sure, sure. Yeah, you're not going to pull that sheath off. It's too hard.
Yeah.
I think here's possibly what he did. He took it. I would unsnap it first, like I said. I don't, do all that business before. I think he went in there. He took it out. It was if it's Stickies, he can put that sheath and the knife in his front pocket. They got pretty deep pockets. He
Hmm.
could put it there. I think it came out, and I think during the whole when it happened, the adrenaline was really, really high, and I think he just forgot.
Hey, Tom, do you have a channel by chance?
No, I'm too busy. I'm doing too much other
Yeah.
stuff. I'm the so
Tom is the reason I think that I bought a Kbar knife is when I think it's
Yeah.
I heard about the butt end of the knife being like a hammer. I just had to feel that for myself, and I think I've always had
Well,
this
that
plan to
makes a
like
lot
do a
more
video.
sense. That makes a lot more sense the way you described, it actually, hitting somebody with it like a hammer. I know you've described that many times, but for some reason I just couldn't visualize it.
It's nice to
I,
hear a second person on the internet and YouTube talking about it. I thank you, Tom. I don't feel so alone now. It's like
well,
nobody else is like jumping on this theory. It's like that's fine. I'm okay to
I
feel
think I think Jeff, because they don't own one, either they don't own one or they've never seen how hard that is on the bottom.
right. Right. Yeah,
There's the
I've been wanting to do a video where I took, I don't know, coconuts or a piece of sheet metal and do a video banging it in, so you can really see. I mean, it is no different than the hammer I have from Home Depot.
No, the K-bars are kind of heavy. Now they're not a cheap knife.
Right.
Like I said, it's always technique in what you want to do.
Mhm.
And this whoever did this doesn't sound like a professional at all. And
Yeah, I mean, many people are making this person sound like he had to be a ninja or, had to be a policeman or a military guy or someone that had the expertise and training in order to get in and out that quickly.
you know what though, there's one thing interesting. That house, it was not that dark. And if we go back to, everybody's probably heard or seen of that Maddie's TikTok video of the girls imitating each other, or young women
Hmm.
imitating each other. If you look on that wall behind the couch, it has over 200 lights. I freezed the TikTok thing. I counted them, and their speakers there have a light on it. So that living room would be pretty illuminated. And if you look at Maddie's room, she had light bulbs strung up too,
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
and those lights were still on when forensics was there against that wall.
That's
Everybody,
what I've tried to tell people as well, Tom. I've tried to tell them it wasn't as dark as people were thinking it was.
and it's not that hard. It's not that layout's not that hard. The house looks goofy from the outside, like it was just put together. Hey, let's do this year, and we'll do this next year. But the inside is pretty straightforward to me. If you're going up, you know where Maddie's bedroom is because of her cowboy boots and the big M in there.
Right.
I'm sure if this person would surveillance would show, he might not know who. I think there's only 3 cars out in the front too, because Ethan's brother had the orange Jeep, orange and black Jeep. So because Ethan would have access to Xana's car, so it'd be
Right.
Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie, and he might not have known about Kaylee's new car.
What do you think when you're talking about the brightness of the room? My thought was that the reason the sheath was left there is because it was dropped in a dark room, and he's like, the last thing he wants to do is, knowing that how much you can see from the back parking lot of that room through the window, the last thing he wants to do is look for a light switch to turn the light on to try and find the sheath.
Um,
Or do you think
I
it was just because it was under her body a little that,
I
he like,
think he might have lost it, Jeff, because when a lot of people haven't been in combat and stuff, and you can think of how you're going to do something, but then when it happens, and the adrenaline in your mind does much different things. You can forget about something. If this is the first time somebody was doing this, they're going to have a whole new flood of new thoughts,
right?
doing that. And
I'm
like
glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. That's a good thought right there.
yeah, I like, for example, with war and stuff, the thing that amazed me that you never see in movies is the sound of bombs and stuff and the earth shaking. The sound is it's like an earthquake in a way when you're by that kind of stuff. And I can see why people get, they don't shell shock, what they call PTSD now and stuff. I can see why that would happen easily. So same with these people. I just think if it was Brian again, I just think he just lost track of it. And he might have thought, like the other night, 12 gauge we were talking about, he might have cleaned it at home and just missed something. And he probably thought, oh, I cleaned it.
Right.
So, the people said he did a lot of
And
dumb
maybe at the time
things.
of his leaving yeah. And maybe leaving the third floor, maybe he thought it was still in his pocket.
Yeah, well, see, killing somebody's not natural. And especially in this case, in war is one thing, at least, kind of the rules, kind of. But when you just go into a house and just gonna take the lives of some people there, and you've never done it, it's gonna be a whole new experience for you, I would think. Because he could have easily, if he just wanted to kill them, just take a gun up there and wipe out everybody in the house.
That's a good point.
If that's your purpose, is to see what it feels like to kill somebody, or if you're trying to see what it feels like if you use a knife, it's a crude method to use. We would never done it. Like I said, we would just use small caliber gun with a silencer. Silencers are legal in the United States. You just have to get a permit from ATF. So you could do it. And a 22 or 30 caliber, they're not going to make much noise at all.
What's
One
your
more
thoughts
question.
about how he got into a car without?
Hold on, Jeff. Hold on. I got a question.
Oh, gotcha.
It says one more. Does he think it happened at 2 or at 4?
I would say 4. I think that, and it's just based on the little bit of evidence we know. Santa with still texting, at that time, and TikTok, and I think that the thud, the dog barking, the whimpering, I think that leads me more
Yeah.
to 4, that time period, not the earlier one.
Hey guys, Maniac Guy, come on in. So today we're going to be talking about this guy right here. Going to be bringing you the Kbar. It's the Mark II fighting knife, and this is an actual Kbar from Olean, New York. So you're going to hear a lot of things. I've seen a lot of comments on previous videos we've done about how, well, a lot of companies make Kbar. It's actually not true. I speak the truth when I say that there were actually a lot of companies that made the Mark II fighting knife in World War II, but there was only one company, if you look up the facts, that made the USMC Mark II Kbar, the one that was coined the Kbar, and everybody else, the troops just started calling it that. And it was actually the Union Cutlery Company, who now is owned by Cutco, and they were out of Olean, New York, even all the way back then, and they are now making these again in basically the same location, and this has a direct lineage. There was only one Kbar, and this is it, guys. So if you're getting an actual Kbar, it's got to be out of Olean, and it's got to be made by Kbar. So any of the imposters, just not the same deal. This is made of 1095 Crowband steel. It's a great steel. So what we're going to be doing with this today, we're going to be putting this through its paces. You hope that you never need to have a self-defense knife, right? It's just those moments you hope you never need. But we're going to be putting this through its paces in those unfortunate moments that you might need it for that kind of thing. Because let's face it, there are probably better bushcraft knives out there than this. But we're going to try this out as not only a bushcraft knife. Right over here, we've got a pack, and we've got some stuff where we're going to do a fire. We're going to do some cutting. We're going to do some cooking. We're going to do a little bushcraft without here in the Maine woods. But also, we're going to take you in just a second to some footage that we filmed just a minute ago before we came out here and put some metal to meat, so to say. Actually, not so to say, literally. And we're going to see how this does defeating things like leather, ripstop, things like that. So stay tuned if that sounds good. The Mark II Kbar USMC fighting knife. Let's get to it, guys. And as always, like and subscribe if you enjoy our content. So there's your use of the pommel there. It's kind of a operator error there. I felt it go straight through and into the tree. We're going to pull this thing down off the tree and just kind of see what that looks like. But I'm thinking she definitely went all the way through and into the tree. So, all right, let's pull her down and have a look. All right, guys. So here we have it. You can see these, it went right through the ripstop without any problems. And into the meat, also went through this plastic casing here. And the stab clearly went all the way through. That's a decent wound. The slash was pretty shallow. It got on some gristle right there. But I would say with the old slash and stab, it's definitely just on the actual raw meat. It's not going to give you any problems. But we are going to do a cut test. But as you can see, she gets in there without an issue. Through the ripstop and the plastic, it did the job. I would not want to take that blade. That's definitely a stout blade. I wouldn't want to take that full on. But all right, well, enough of that testing. Let's get on to the next test where we got something else lined up for you. All right, stay tuned. Let's get to it. Alrighty, guys. So under here, we've got a milk jug. I've got a pork loin on top of the milk jug, and then I've just got these ripstop BDUs just kind of thrown over everything. So what I want to do is I want to just see, giving some light pressure and coming down. This even feels aggressive. Seeing what kind of a stab this does. Just giving it a push down through. Will it go through all this stuff? I don't know. Let's find out. That was actually alarmingly easy, like butter. all the way through. Also shows you how much penetration you get with something like that. Look at that. So this is definitely a formidable tool. I mean, these are legit ripstop BDUs, and I cannot believe how easy that went right through, probably even right in through the pocket. Yeah, she's gonna do whatever you need her to do. Alrighty, guys, top grain buffalo hide leather. Let's see if she'll go right through this leather and down in through the pork loin that's inside. Obviously, I'm going to do a kind of a reverse hammer kind of stab. And not even a problem with that. All the way through. And rubber, everything. I'm wondering, just with a stab. Not even an issue. Right into the stump underneath. So let's take a look at the loin here. Given the fact that in previous times this kind of stuff was used as armor, I was kind of wondering what it would do as far as stopping this. Not a whole lot. There's your 2 stabs right there. That is nasty. Whatever was in there would not be happy. Now I can tell you, obviously self-defense is something you never want to have to use a knife for. Look at that slice. But honestly speaking, it is one of those things that this is what this knife was bred for. So anybody that buys a Kbar that says that they would never use it in a defensive way, I mean, that's kind of probably, in my estimation, there are better bushcraft knives out there, although we're going to bring this out for a little bushcraft, to put it through all of its paces. But honestly speaking, if I'm buying a Kbar, it's to have it for also a self-defense tool as well as bushcraft, whether it be against animal or the 2-legged variety animal. All kinds of predators out there, right, guys? So as you can see, after all that, she's still slicing amazingly. And let me see, we've got some oranges here. We'll see how these do. Let's see what that looks like. I'm actually really impressed with this Crovan steel and how well this is slicing. Fine slices, not fine slices, whatever. So there we go, guys. The Kbar brand, Kbar USMC Mark II fighting knife. As far as self-defensive and cutting, slashing, stabbing, the hope you never need it scenario, yeah, I would definitely say you're going to be okay if you've got one of these and it comes down to putting metal to meat in an absolute life-threatening situation. I think this is gonna do the job that you need it to do for you. So, all right, well, we're going to pack up here, do a little cleaning up, and we'll see you in the woods for a little bit of bushcraft testing and join us for a little fire. Alrighty.